as you can, getting the vaccine.
We're learning more about our alleged plot.
It is critically important.
To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
All right, it is the final hour of trading on Wall Street. Strong U.S. sales data is pushing up stocks. The Dow is up about 400 points. We are seeing healthy gains across all the major indices right now. Ukraine ends its defense of the Azovstal steel plant, the last remaining Ukrainian holdout in Mariupol. And Elon Musk continues to poke Twitter over its user numbers, this time asking the SEC to investigate. And Ireland's leader says the British government can't just keep talking to itself after the UK lays out unilateral plans to change its post-Brexit trading relationship. It is Tuesday, May 17th. I'm Zain Asher, and my colleague Richard Quest, and this is Quest Means Business. Good evening. Ukraine appears to have surrendered its last stronghold in Mariupol, ordering commanders inside a steel plant to save the troops' lives. Russia says it has evacuated more than 250 Ukrainian fighters and taken them to Russian-controlled territory. As you can see in this video, some had to be carried out on stretchers from the plant they had so fiercely defended. Ukraine hailed the fighters as heroes of our time. Now they are in Russian hands. Kyiv says its hopes for a prisoner swap to free some of the most heavily injured. With the surrender, Moscow gains control of Mariupol and also completes a land bridge from its border to Crimea. Melissa Bell joins us live now. So Melissa, just walk us through what happens to these Ukrainian fighters that have been evacuated. They are now technically prisoners of war.
Correct. The evacuations had begun yesterday, Zain, and that, of course, is a source of huge hope for their families. But it also marks a significant turn in this war and could mark the beginning of a new phase, since, as you just said, that important land bridge between Crimea and Donbass now established for Russian forces, it gives them that swathe of territory that they can claim as a victory in their fight begun just under 3 months ago here in Ukraine. Of course, there is the question from a humanitarian point of view of what that means, and you're quite right to point out to those wounded, some of them having to be carried out on images that are difficult to watch. These are the images that have been released by the Russian Ministry of Defense. We've blurred their images because we're talking about prisoners of war at this stage. The surrender of Azovstal, important, of course, militarily, strategically, in terms of the war's momentum, but it was because they were so heavily wounded, it was because they were running out of food that the decision was made to announce their surrender and to allow for those evacuations to happen. A huge period of wait now opens for the families of those fighters, because none of them has any way of knowing whether their loved one is amongst those evacuated so far, or indeed whether that prisoner exchange that you mentioned will in fact happen. It is still the subject of intense and difficult negotiations that Zelensky had warned last night required delicacy and time. We caught up with the wife of one of those fighters earlier on today in the suburbs of Kyiv. Now, she'd heard the news, as had everyone else on Ukrainian television last night, that those evacuations had begun. As a result, she and her daughter had been shopping this morning to go and buy some food just in case her husband came home. Have a listen.
We so hope that he will return, that this will happen. We've been waiting for it for so long. We love him very much and are waiting for him.
I really want my dad to come back. Our family has been through so much since 2014. Poor dad, really.
Now, that family, that mother and daughter that you just heard from, two-time refugees since they fled 2014, the Donbass area, after it fell to Russian-backed separatists. They then had to flee the siege and ultimate razing of Mariupol in March, and now find themselves on the suburbs of Kyiv, waiting to find out if their father and husband is amongst those who will be released. But clearly that now the subject of intense negotiations between two countries whose overall negotiations have now been suspended. An advisor to President Zelensky announcing earlier today that the search for some kind of diplomatic resolution, a political negotiated settlement between Russia and Ukraine, those talks now suspended because Ukraine simply doesn't agree with the Russian idea of looking for some sort of partition of the territory. That's certainly what the advisor had to announce earlier on. So for the time being, the fate of those fighters hangs in the balance, and the fate, no doubt, of the war also. We wait to hear what Russia intends to do next, but clearly it can claim an important victory tonight by claiming Mariupol and, of course, that huge swathe of territory that I mentioned a moment ago, Zain.
All right, Melissa Bell live for us there. Thank you so much. A fresh indication that Moscow's war in Ukraine is not going according to plan. A retired Russian general went on state TV and said so. In a rare and surprising public critique of the war, the former general described the military situation on the ground and said that Russian forces face a tough battle ahead.
I must say, let's not drink information tranquilizers, because sometimes information is spread about hearing some moral or psychological breakdown of Ukraine's armed forces, as if they are nearing a crisis of morale or a fracture. None of this is close to reality.
Despite heavy fighting in eastern Ukraine and missile strikes almost to the Polish border, Russia still is not close to capturing what would be perhaps its biggest prize, the strategic and vital port city of Odessa. Still, Russia has been shelling the region and has ships in the Black Sea off Odessa's shores. And as the city faces off against the Russians today, it's also struggling with the Russians of its past. CNN's Sarah Seidner explains.
The remains of freshly bombed buildings, a hotel and homes reduced to dust, the result of the latest Russian missile attack in the Odessa region that has experienced strike after strike on places people live, work, and visit. This is Russia's attempt to terrorize a target it desperately wants to possess.
Tell me what the strategic importance is of Odessa.
This is the seagate of our country, he says. This is a city of legend. It's home to Ukraine's largest Black Sea port, used both commercially and militarily. Russia has already attacked its oil refinery. If Putin's forces were to take the Odessa region, Ukraine's entire Black Sea coast would be controlled by Russia. The mayor of Odessa bristles at the idea. Ukraine today is a maritime power. It will be a completely different state without access to the sea, without transport logistics, he says. We and our armed forces will do everything to prevent the enemy from entering. But the ties to the enemy run deep, historically and financially. Before the war, Russian tourists helped this Ukrainian seaside city thrive. Ideal. Russians really liked our cuisine, our shops here, the sea, architecture, and there were no problems. Alexander Babich is a historian who also owns a tour guide company. He says citizens of Odessa speak Russian more than they speak Ukrainian. Pro-Russian politicians were voted into office regularly. The mayor was once friendly with Russia. He himself spoke to us in Russian.
Were you pro-Russian before and changed?
I want to say that I have always had pro-Odessa views, he says, but I love and respect the history of my city where I was born. Everywhere you look in this city is a reminder of its Russian history. There are statues of Alexander Pushkin, considered Russia's greatest poet, and monuments to the conqueror of this land, Russian Empress Catherine the Great. Her sculpture used to be guarded and kept pristine. Now, it's soiled and a fresh Ukrainian flag flies on it. There has been a long fight over whether to remove these symbols of imperialism in Odessa. There is social demand, saying we need to get rid of these symbols, he says. Not everyone agrees. Odessa writer and poet Paul Makarov says the monuments should stand. The attitude was positive. We appreciate and respect Catherine. Today's events should in no way affect our attitude towards her. And there is this problem. If we remove the monument to Catherine, we need to rename the square, he says. It was for a time named after Karl Marx, for a while named after Hitler, then again Karl Marx, and here again after Catherine. What name should we choose? But the more Russian missiles wipe away lives here, the more fierce the argument to erase the physical reminders of its Russian past. Sarah Seidner, CNN, Odessa.
Finland and Sweden are moving one step closer to NATO membership. Speaking alongside the Finnish president in Stockholm, Sweden's prime minister said the two countries will submit applications to join the alliance on Wednesday. Earlier, Finland's parliament overwhelmingly voted in favor of joining NATO. Both governments say they believe differences with Turkey will be resolved. Nino dos Santos joins us live now from Stockholm. So Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has said that he condemns what he believes is the willingness of these two Nordic countries to host Kurdish militias. What makes the governments of both Sweden and Finland so confident this issue is going to be resolved, Nina?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question, Zain, because it's a question I got the chance to put to Magdalena Andersson, the Prime Minister of Sweden, just after a press conference that she hosted with Sauli Niinisto, who's the President of Finland, who is here for a state visit that has been taking place, very carefully choreographed one, over the course of these accession plans being voted on, debated on, and now, as you said, signed off. And essentially, it appears as though Turkey, or at least Turkey's president, is raising 2 points here. One, as you mentioned, yes, it's the large number of Kurdish people who have sought asylum here in Sweden. But on the other hand, it's also an arms embargo that Sweden pushed for and implemented on Turkish weaponry after 2019, when Turkey, apologies, got a problem with the light here, when Turkey invaded parts of northern Syria for a military operation there. So those are some sticking points. But Magdalena Andersson appeared to be clear about the fact that there might be some negotiating room. She said she was looking forward to having more bilateral conversations with Turkey about this very issue. Take a listen.
We have stated very clearly to Turkey that we are ready to talk, we are ready to go to Turkey to have bilateral discussions on the way forward. So we are ready to do our part.
Well, that's quite a big deal for a Prime Minister who, on the one hand, whose party was staunchly against NATO up until just March of this year. For 73 years, the Social Democrats here in Sweden have made it their main policy to be against NATO, and they've had a U-turn on that. And now also to see this rapprochement with Turkey from a woman who's going to potentially fight an election in 4 months' time, that's also a big thing for a domestic policy point of view. But looking beyond that, what does this mean for this part of the world? It is a huge geostrategic shift, and it's going to start happening very, very quickly. As you pointed out, we've got the paperwork heading over to Brussels, to NATO headquarters tomorrow morning. We'll have the ambassadors of these two countries having a meeting with the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, tomorrow morning. And then on Thursday, there's the big show of support from President Joe Biden himself, because he's invited the leaders of both Sweden and Finland to the White House to talk about their accession plans. That is being viewed very much as a big diplomatic push on behalf of the United States in favour of getting these two rich countries with big defence sectors, by the way, into the bloc. It'll mean a much more secure NATO for the future, some members say. Zain?
Nino dos Santos, the consummate professional, despite all the issues we were having there with your lights and your camera, you held it together. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, Twitter's fate is more uncertain than ever. Elon Musk again says his takeover is on hold, and his reasons are making some speculate that perhaps he's getting cold feet. More on that next.
What do you see when you look at the surface? Just that, the surface. It's when we dive in that discovery begins. Gathering and dissecting data, predicting trends, and projecting risk. Setting aside assumptions and questioning everything, from how we do our work to what our work can do. Down here in the depths, a new world of possibility emerges. Essential intelligence from S&P Global takes you here, providing the data, technology, workflow solutions, and expertise you need to push below the surface and plumb the wonders beneath. Because a better, more prosperous future awaits. It's yours for the seeking. S&P Global. Seek and prosper.
Air Quality Update, in association with Copernicus, Europe's Eyes on Earth. Air Quality Update, in association with Copernicus, Europe's Eyes on Earth.
A regulatory filing by Twitter says Elon Musk quickly reached a deal to buy the company before raising concerns about fake accounts or bots. Musk now says the deal is on hold until Twitter proves its user numbers are accurate. He even tweeted at the SEC to investigate. Twitter shares are up today, but still well below Musk's offer of $54.20. Twitter says it is holding him to that price. CNN's Brian Stelter is here with the very latest. So, Brian, what is going on here? Is Elon Musk trying to wriggle his way out of this? What are your thoughts?
Yes, he is. Could Musk's maneuver be any more glaring, right? He is clearly trying to use this spam bot issue, which could have come up in due diligence before signing any paperwork. He's trying to use this now to wriggle out of the deal. As you said, he is trying to do it in a very obvious way, and he's being called out by Wall Street analysts, by observers. Whether that matters or not, I think remains to be seen. As you said, the Twitter stock price is still far below Musk's offer of $54.20. And the Twitter board wants to hold him to that offer. So there's a massive gap right now in valuation and a big question mark about what happens. But anybody who thought when Musk announced that he was buying Twitter, when he was taking over, anyone who was skeptical, anyone who was suspicious, anyone who doubted this would actually go through, they are being proven correct right about now.
So what are the consequences, though, if he does try to back out? Does he pay a fine?
Well, so it's an interesting question, right? Because you or I, normal people, would face real consequences, right? There would be fines that would actually hurt, would actually pinch. There would be, potentially, legal consequences. Years of lawsuits are possible out of this. But for someone like Elon Musk, who has essentially infinite resources, I'm not sure any of those consequences really apply or will really pinch him that badly. And I think that's a fascinating question in the years to come, because this is probably going to unwind for a long time. You can imagine the number of possible shareholder lawsuits and other sorts of legal maneuvers that will come if this deal just totally collapses and Twitter is left without a buyer. But will those consequences actually hurt him? I think it's a different question. Yes, there could be a $1 billion breakup fee, but for Elon Musk, is that just called Tuesday?
Yes, because he's so rich. But just in terms of, this whole bots issue that he's been raising, the issue of what percentage of Twitter's users are fake, what percentage of the accounts are not real. This is an issue that Elon Musk has, of course, been aware of. Twitter has struggled with this issue for some time. So why is this coming up now all of a sudden?
Right. This has been an issue for years. In fact, Twitter has been disclosing this as an issue for years. It's been regularly reporting that it's been tracking this and trying to stamp out the spam bots, trying to remove fake accounts. And as the current CEO explained in that Twitter thread on Monday, the company is working on this on a daily basis and removing accounts every single day. He said more than 1 million accounts a day. So if Musk had wanted to know more about this before offering to buy Twitter, he certainly could have. Instead, he said he was going to take action on it. He said he was going to come in and solve the problem. And then only weeks later, once Tesla stock declined, once the markets declined, once this deal didn't look so hot, then he claimed that this was an issue that is worth putting the deal on hold over. In fact, remember, he linked to a 2-week-old news story initially to justify putting the deal on hold. So this has all been such a charade from the beginning. Musk coming up with an excuse to pull out of the Twitter deal. But the spam bot issue actually is interesting. And the Twitter executives and the Twitter staffers actually work really hard at removing fake accounts because it is a problem for the company. Advertisers don't want to be advertising to spam accounts. They want to advertise to real people. So it's a real problem for Twitter and other companies. But I almost think Musk is making a mockery out of it by sharing poop emojis and by dismissing the real efforts of Twitter to take it seriously and using it as an excuse to get out of this deal. Or, look, he might not be getting out of it. He might be trying to renegotiate, right? He might be trying to get a much lower price, but I guess that's why he's doing that. That emoji, we're all over the stock right now.
Yeah, but as you point out, if he does end up paying that $1 billion fine, maybe it is just another Tuesday for Elon Musk, given how much money he has. All right. Brian Stelter, you have to leave it there. Always good to see you, my friend.
You too. Thanks.
Walmart says it expects the rising cost of food, fuel and wages to cut into its profits this year. The retail giant shares are taking a dive on the company's revised profit outlook. The company's first quarter earnings also missed expectations. Executives are blaming inflation. They say Walmart shoppers are shifting away from discretionary items and buying fewer things. Paula Monica has more for us to just explain to us how much inflation is affecting the average Walmart customer.
Yeah, Zane, clearly it is having a significant impact, so much that Walmart really had a poor quarterly earnings report and also gave guidance that Wall Street did not like at all. And the stock is plunging on this news, and it's bringing down some of its fellow retail competitors. Target, which reports earnings tomorrow, its stock is down not nearly as dramatically as Walmart, which is, at last check plunged more than 10%. Target was down about 2 or 3%. So still notable and significant, but not as drastic as Walmart. I think there is definitely a sense on Wall Street of people being concerned that maybe the U.S. consumer is starting to show some cracks because of higher prices for just about everything. Inflation is clearly a significant problem for this economy.
So besides Target, which obviously investors are fearing right now, what other retailers are likely to be affected by this exact same issue, inflation?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that just about any retailer that has a big presence with commodity-based, goods, food first and foremost, it's going to be an issue. You're seeing it with the price of clothing, with other goods as well. What's notable, though, Zane, is that the housing market, that's an area of the economy that a lot of people still wonder, is that the next shoe to drop, so to speak? Will people start to be concerned about higher mortgage rates as the Fed raises interest rates? Doesn't seem like that might be the case just yet when you look at Home Depot's results. Home Depot had a better than expected earnings report this morning and good guidance. So Home Depot stock is actually up at last check today, despite what's going on with Walmart. So that could be a good sign for Lowe's, which reports tomorrow morning as well, in addition to Target.
Yeah, interesting with Home Depot there. All right, Paula Monica, live for us. Thank you so much. Steep rate rises are coming for the EU and the US if inflation doesn't ease. A European Central Bank official says there could be a half-point interest rate rise in July, and Jerome Powell says the Fed will not hesitate to continue raising rates in half-point steps. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Powell said the economy is strong enough to take a tighter monetary policy.
We know that this is a time for us to be tightly focused on the path ahead and on getting inflation back down to 2%. We know how people are suffering from high inflation. and we have both the tools and the resolve to get inflation back down. And no one should doubt our resolve in doing that. And I think if you look at how quickly we've moved in the last few months, really, then you'll see that financial conditions have tightened quite a bit. What we need to see is inflation coming down in a clear and convincing way, and we're going to keep pushing until we see that.
Erik Nielsen is the Chief Economics Advisor at UniCredit, who joins us live now from Berlin. Erik, thank you so much for being with us. So you heard Fed Chair Jerome Powell basically saying that, he will not hesitate to continue raising interest rates in this country, in the US, until inflation comes down. How are the markets likely to respond to that?
Well, I think in America, saying it's priced into a large extent, right? There was some fear that they might go a bigger step than 50, but I think it's my assessment at least is that it has been pretty well communicated in America, and it is there's a great consensus that inflation in America compared to Europe is a demand-driven thing. There's too much heat on the economy, and the Fed has to do something, right? So, and that differs quite a bit from Europe, where the consensus is a little bit less clear.
Well, let's see what the Dow is doing right now. If we could just pull that up. Last time I checked, it was up about 400 points or so, right? It still is. But we've seen the markets sort of seesawing over the past few weeks in this country. Are investors slowly getting used to this idea that, this is the new normal, that higher interest rates are here to stay in this country?
No, I don't know. I'm in the school of Bill Dudley, who famously wrote, right, that we sometime in the market forget that when the central bank tighten policies, it is to tighten financial conditions. It is to slow the economy, and that comes almost always with some lower asset prices in the equity markets. That's part of a way of taking some of the stimulus away, or even tighten policies. So I'm in the camp that who thinks that we would have a leg further down. I mean, maybe not a big one, but a leg further down in markets.
Okay. And just in terms of a recession here in the United States, what are your thoughts on how soon we might see a recession and whether or not we can actually avoid one?
That's a very good question. I don't think the U.S. will get a recession. Europe is in greater danger of that. We are closer to the war, and we are much more being hit. We are hit much harder by the commodity prices. But the point here, I think, for the U.S. is that the world is really not in a good place now, right? The U.S. has been pushing along pretty nicely because of all the fiscal stimulus and what have you. But if you look around the world, that you have emerging markets certainly looking increasingly difficult. China particularly slowing, probably more than they print their numbers. And Europe doesn't look so good either. So at a time when we are coming in here with some withdrawal, or maybe substantial withdrawal of stimulus in America, maybe on both fronts of fiscal and monetary policy, you will certainly see a slowdown, but I don't think the U.S. will hit a recession. But it could be close, but I doubt it.
And just in terms of China, since you touched on China, we're seeing China's zero COVID policy having a massive effect when it comes to demand. In fact, not a single car was sold in Shanghai in the month of April. That's incredible. How is all of that impacting the global economy, do you think?
It's big, right? And I think that there's a big possibility that it's even bigger than the numbers they print. Remember, China has first big structural issues in terms of growth, the demographics, and that has been a running issues. Now we don't even talk anymore about the big other break they have, which is the real estate crisis, the financing of the real estate, which is where they are doing their best to hold it, but the leverage in the system in China is huge. I mean, if you think back to the crisis we had here in Europe, and you remember Ireland and Southern Europe, these were peanuts compared to the numbers that China has now. And then comes on top of that, their very peculiar handling or tough handling of the COVID crisis. And you said exactly the pictures we see from Shanghai and others. It's absolutely devastating. So the numbers we economists have always thought that the Chinese are smoothing their GDP numbers a little. No, you don't get such quarterly numbers quarter after quarter. And that's okay, whatever. But now I rather suspect that they're smoothing them a little bit more than they should do, maybe for political reason up to the Congress at the end of the year or something. But that's a guess on my part. But it doesn't look good.
You're low on trust there. All right, Eric Nielsen.
I am low on trust.
Live for us there. Thank you so much. All right, still to come here on Quest Means Business, a brewing Brexit fight. The UK wants to sidestep its deal with the EU. The Irish Prime Minister says that the UK needs to take negotiations seriously. He spoke about it with Richard Quest. We'll have that next.
When you follow a story, you may be asked to take risks and sometimes go down a path that's not marked.
Where Iraqi troops would pre-position and these Americans would advise them.
These protests are a test for Hamas.
Any understanding between Israel and Gaza could quickly fall apart again.
The protesters are just outside a military base. They're throwing rocks and security forces firing tear gas.
When you dare to take risks, you witness passion and persistence.
And they just want to get their past be processed so they can get out of this facility.
And that's where change happens.
The one thing they have in common is a determination to keep going.
I'm Hadass Gold in Jerusalem, and this is CNN.
The UK government says it's putting forward a new law that's sure to increase tensions with the European Union over Brexit. The law would nullify certain elements of their 2019 Brexit agreement. The EU says a unilateral change would breach international trade rules and warn it would retaliate if the law is passed. The UK says it still hopes to negotiate a solution to its trade dispute with Brussels. Ireland's leader, however, says the UK is not sincerely engaging in talks with the European Union. He spoke to Richard Quest a short time ago.
It's time you started negotiating seriously and in a substantial way with the European Union. I mean, this is the treaty that you signed up to. The British government signed up to this, ratified it in Parliament, and now have misgivings in terms of the potential operation of this protocol, because let's not forget some aspects of this haven't been implemented yet. Grace periods, exemptions and so forth. But nothing can replace substantive professional negotiations between the European Union and the United Kingdom to deal with issues that have legitimately arisen in respect of the operation of the protocol, particularly raised by unionists within Northern Ireland, which we believe can be resolved through sensible negotiation.
Right, but they would say that there has been negotiation for the last 6 months to a year. There has been negotiation. The EU proposals are not acceptable to the British and vice versa, and therefore this is the way forward. They're not, of course, at the moment activating Article 16.
There hasn't been negotiation for the last 6 months.
They said there has been.
But they know there hasn't, de facto, because there's elections happening in Northern Ireland. Now, there were engagement prior to Christmas. And to be fair to Maroš Šefčovič, the Vice President of the European Commission, he brought forward very significant advances. And he listened and he met unionist politicians and also industry and business in Northern Ireland. By the way, the protocol is advantageous now. It's working in favour of industry, business, jobs, agriculture in Northern Ireland. And most people in Northern Ireland want to retain access to the European single market.
Would you support a change in the protocol?
No, we're prepared as members of the European Union, through negotiations between the European Union, the Commission, Vice President and his team, and the UK government, to minimise the impact in terms of checks and so on of the operation of the protocol, which can be done with sensible engagement. It can be done, but this kind of on-off start, you know, the British government can't just keep talking to itself about this. It needs really to get into proper negotiations with the European Union.
At the heart of this latest Brexit fight is the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's a deal that was signed in 2019 to ensure that even with the UK leaving the European Union, the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland would stay open. Bianca Nobilo explains.
All of the disruption of Brexit, arguably the thorniest challenge and least debated beforehand, was its effect on the island of Ireland. The Northern Ireland Protocol came into effect in 2020 to try and address some of these difficulties. It had two key objectives. Number one, protecting the EU's single market, which allows the free movement of people, goods, services and capital. Because Northern Ireland is part of the UK, separated by the Irish Sea, and Republic of Ireland is part of the EU. So this is now the only land border between the UK and the EU. The second thing was avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland. The removal of border checks was an important part of the peace process in recent decades, and there are fears that the restoration of a hard border here would have an incendiary effect on tensions between the Unionists, who want Northern Ireland to remain part of the UK, and the Republicans, who want unity with the Republic of Ireland. Plus, they had to find a way to mitigate the economic and social impact on people and businesses which move across this border frequently. So the way to square this circle ended up being customs and regulatory checks on the movement of goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, effectively creating a border in the Irish Sea, which has infuriated Unionists. So why does this matter? The Northern Ireland executive is in deadlock because of it. Unionist parties are refusing to re-enter government until major changes are made to this protocol. Because this assembly is based on power sharing, there must be both a nationalist representative and a unionist, and one cannot be in power without the other. So, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, there he is, says that he wants to get the government there back up and running. He's also arguing that the circumstances have changed dramatically since the protocol was agreed, namely the pandemic and a European war worsening a cost of living crisis. So he's threatening to override the protocol to make changes that are palatable to his government and unionist parties in Northern Ireland. And he says he'll do that unilaterally, saying that the UK would have a necessity to act if a compromise can't be found with the EU. But the EU has made it clear that unilateral action would be a breach of international law, which is generally not a good look for a head of state. And the EU has warned that taking that step could spell a trade war and/or legal challenges. And Sinn Féin, now the largest party in the Northern Ireland Assembly, has warned that the Prime Minister tearing up the protocol will destabilise Ireland.
Bianca Nobilo joins us live now. Bianca, thank you so much for breaking that down there. But with the standoff that's happening now between the UK and the EU, and neither side, as you point out, willing to budge, what is the solution?
What we've seen today is the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss put forward a plan to Parliament to enable the United Kingdom to move unilaterally on this, so essentially moving out of the way of a solution and towards unilateral decision-making by the UK. But the EU has said that they will not tolerate any form of unilateral action from the United Kingdom, that they're willing to explore different flexibilities. But the EU have underscored they have significant concerns if the UK do want to go ahead and essentially change the rules to suit them. And they they've said that they will use any measures at their disposal to retaliate, and some have thought that that will indicate a potential trade war. But in terms of what the UK actually wants to achieve here, some of their main grievances are around checks on British sausages and cured meats, veterinary checks. They want the ability to be able to change VAT to address the cost of living crisis in Great Britain, especially providing energy relief. And crucially, they want to get rid of the remnants of the European Court of Justice arbitration in Northern Ireland. That really offends the Eurosceptic sense of sovereignty. So one of the proposed solutions, Zain, which I think has the most likelihood of success, because the EU have indicated they would countenance something like this, is the idea of a green lane for goods going from Great Britain to Northern Ireland that are only destined for Northern Ireland, and then a red lane with extra checks for goods leaving Great Britain which are intended for Ireland. But the fundamental principle of this is the fact that you cannot have an inviolate Good Friday Agreement, an impeccable union, and Brexit all at once. It just isn't possible unless you're Houdini or Einstein, and we don't have that. We have Boris Johnson in the EU.
They're in an impossible situation. So what is the significance, though, of the UK basically breaking international law?
Well, it's something that politicians, even within the Prime Minister's own party, and diplomats have been deeply concerned about how that would look and what that would telegraph to the global community. They think that it would undermine Britain in the eyes of the world in this rules-based order and in the eyes of its allies, and empower adversaries who want to play around with the rules-based order as things stand. It's also would problematise things when dealing with the Northern Ireland Executive. So as you've just mentioned, Zain, and as I said in my explainer, one of the key issues here is that the Northern Ireland Executive is not functioning at the moment because the DUP won't come to the table as they don't like the protocol as it stands. But the Sinn Féin, the other part of that executive, has said that if the Prime Minister goes ahead and unilaterally breaks international law, then they won't partake. So he's now between a rock and a hard place.
All right, Bianca Nobilo, live for us there. Thank you so much. And that is Quest Means Business. I'll be back at the top of the hour as we make a dash for the closing bell. Up next, Living Golf.
What makes a great golf? Is it the one that electrifies? The one that is too good to be true? That steals our breath? The one that shakes the world with a thunderstorm of 1,000 voices? The one that rewrites football history? Or is it a goal that is far greater than that? A goal we at Hyundai are committed to, driven by heart and technical prowess. A goal that humanity can only score together under one jersey, one flag, and for one monumental cause, a united world for sustainability. When we rise as one team, team-centric, we can still win this game.
Great things are coming. Are you in?
Last year, the very first motorcycle with radar. And what that's allowed us to do is to be able to put some technology in the motorcycle that gives features of safety for the rider, including blind spot indicators that's been used on cars for years. So we're not only dedicated to that performance, but also to try and improve our environmental impact and also the safety for the riders themselves.
Living Golf
in association with Gulf Saudi.
Welcome back to Living Golf. Now, while South African players have long held a place amongst the game's elite, golf is still a considerably new sport across the continent of Africa. In Nigeria, those who are passionate about the sport have been driving initiatives that they hope will bring the game to the greater masses. And for someone like Georgia Obo, who's the first player of Nigerian descent to play on the Ladies European Tour, her success is really just the start of a brighter future for golf across West Africa. Born in Manchester, England, Georgia Obo picked up the sport at a very young age, and with encouragement from her father and grandmother, she began playing, winning, and loving the game.
I enjoyed the challenge. The best part at that time for me was competing. So for me, it was just competing and collecting trophies at the time, but I loved it, honestly.
So did your handicap topple down very quickly as an amateur?
I think so. I was probably one of the youngest in the area to get a handicap at about 7, if I'm correct. So I actually was the youngest to participate in the English under-13 for girls. So I was 9 at the time, and I think my handicap was about 18 or so. So it's been a great experience, really. I had the determination to just go out there and want to win, so I just kept on improving.
After numerous competitions in the UK, she won the US Kids Championship at age 14, with her last event as an amateur at the 2018 Youth Olympics in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Oh, that was a great experience, representing Nigeria in Olympic Games. Really, when people say, oh, there's nothing like an Olympic Games, I understood after competing there. I was able to watch the athletics event and cheer on my fellow Nigerians, and we were able to score a gold and a silver. So overall, it was a great experience, and looking back now, a lot of the competitors in the golfing discipline have now turned professional and are very successful.
We caught up with Obo at the Saudi Ladies International, where she not only wears her heritage on her sleeve, but hopes to drive the message of opportunity in Nigeria.
The truth is, in Nigeria, we love, when we have tournaments, they're always big. When we have opens, they're always big. We enjoy the social aspect of golf. Yeah. So to convince someone to actually do a golf tournament is not the issue. It's just to convince them to do a professional golf tournament. That is where more needs to be done. We are improving every day, learning more and getting stronger partners. So I foresee probably in the next 5 years that we'll have several professional golf events in Nigeria on the world stage.
Players like Obo aren't the only ones who want to see golf take off in Nigeria. Others involved in the game include caddy Abimbola Olakanye, who wants to inspire and include potential new players to the game by first giving them a shot.
We are here at Cross Creek Golf Club in Ilado, Akure, Ondo State, and we're actually setting up a chipping green for the kids, and we have a putting green there for the kids. And this is the most important aspect of golf because putting is very critical. You have to go back and you have to make sure you follow through, you see?
Professional caddy Bibi Olakanye found the passion and patience to take on one of the most important aspects of the sport, growing the game itself.
And I feel like by passing the knowledge along to the younger ones, it makes them good members of their family, then they can become proper kids in the society, but pretty much encourage them to do the right things.
Bibi, as he's known on the course, has caddied for more than 16 pro golfers on several tours. His love for the game began at 17 when he picked up his first club while attending high school in the US. Now he plans to build the first chip and putt in his hometown about 300 kilometers east from Lagos.
I believe that the shot game is the most important aspect of golf. Turn and hit the ball. Keep your eyes on the ball. Beautiful. I've been working on my project now for roughly 4 years, and I decided to come back to Nigeria to teach golf to kids so they can pick it up. simply because I feel like golf is a sport that they can run to.
For now, BB hopes programs like his will become a catalyst for broader initiatives within the country to mould the future stars of this West African nation.
I'd like to see fund public facilities for the kids and pretty much grow golf the way it's supposed to be grown. If you look at it, the projection of Nigeria's population in the next 30 years, we are going to be moving to the third largest country in the world. We are asking the RNA, the USGA, the PGA to help develop golf, the IGF, International Golf Federation, to help develop golf properly. I'm funding a lot out of my pocket. I feel like, you know what, I get satisfaction from it because it's my passion. Hopefully, you know, something good come out of it later on down the line.
We've missed the globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering the city's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
I love being here.
And making discoveries that wow.
You've got to be joking. Nice here, isn't it?
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
It's time to close out our episode with a look at what's driving the shifting demographics of golfers hitting the links across South Africa.
They call themselves the Saturday School.
This group has been together for more than 10 years.
19 members strong.
It's so wonderful to be part of a crowd that is so well put together.
On weekdays, they're in the boardrooms.
I see myself as like being on a treadmill Monday to Friday.
But come Saturday morning, there's only one place you'll find them.
And one of the areas where you would be able to create a lot of relationships for yourselves and networks and connections is in the sport of golf.
Golfers in South Africa have it good. About 150,000 players tee off on more than 450 courses countrywide. And with roughly 2,500 hours of sunshine and average temperatures around 18 degrees Celsius, it's a year-round pastime. Today, the face of South Africa's top country clubs are becoming more demographically diverse.
People also need to have heroes. So I would think that without any doubt, without any qualification, I think that Tiger Woods' success in particular drew a lot of people who are black into that particular sport, without any doubt.
While the sport has traditionally been played by white South Africans, it's a fast-growing sport among the country's black upper and middle class, for a different reason.
Here, the higher you go in your job, it's no longer about your qualifications and how good you are. It's actually about people relationships.
I learn a lot, okay? And that to me is the value that I'm getting out of this thing, that cross-pollination of ideas and thoughts.
So if you look at my group, so we've got what I consider to be the movers and shakers. You've got banking executives, you've got captains of industry, some of the top minds as far as brand and advertising is concerned, and the next generation as far as agriculture and engineering is concerned.
You need a legal opinion from someone, you know who to call. You're doing a deal and you want to check if all the paperwork is good, you know who to call.
The Saturday School play their golf at the exclusive members-only Johannesburg Country Club. Tubung Magare is the club's vice-captain.
The who is who of industry in this country walk the same fairways as me, end up on the 19th hole, which is the country club, and I have the privilege and the honor of being able to interact with these individuals.
If you put together a particular game because you want it discuss something specific. The 19th hole is where we should be able to convert this.
So I've had an opportunity to do business with a variety of the members in this group. And then, of course, I'm not going to get into the details of some of the deals because there are 19 guys. Now somebody's going to, oh, so you did business with that one. So why didn't you do business with me?
Another prestigious club, the Royal Johannesburg and Kensington Golf Club, or just plain Royal as it's referred to by its members, is seeing a similar trend.
We definitely have seen an increase of golfers and different demographics of golfers coming together and cutting that business deal or having that meeting on the golf course.
The ripple effect goes beyond the C-suite, with some executives encouraging